Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to GEEXX Reads. Today I want to review the book The Last Argument of Kings by Abercrombie, an image of which you will see here. Man, this thing's big. This is the third book in the First Law trilogy, and is, as such as the conclusion. There will be some spoilers. I do try to keep them to a minimum, but it's hard to review a book without spoiling something. So, as we last left off, Beaz's quest to find the seed was a failure. They return to the Union. Their little group breaks up. Logan, Nine Fingers, decides to go to the north. Pharaoh stays with Beaz in the city of Ottawa to try and she still wants revenge, of which Beaz has promised her. Giselle, back in the city after his adventures with them, decides he pretty much wants just a simple life. He's, lost his thoughts for glory, just wants, just wants a good life. Beaz goes to join the war against the Northmen. Not Beaz. Logan, Nine Fingers, goes north to join the war against the Northmen. It's Sandan Gladka. He finds himself with too many masters. The bribe he took, or the money he took from the Bank of Valentin Bulk, has given them power over him in such a way that they'll threaten to expose the fact that they gave him 1 million pieces of gold to the Archlector. And the Archlector and the bank have competing interests. Colonel West has his own problems. He is the army facing Bethod, the king of the north. And of course, things just keep going south. Oddly enough, things go south quite a bit for all of our characters. There's not a lot of positives. To start off with, the only one that really seems to have any positives is Giselle, Dan Luthar. He reunites with RD, West's sister. And although things don't go quite as he planned, because RD is she was a victim of child abuse. I mean, her father was an abusive man. She has her problems. She has her trauma, which Giselle comes to realize after pursuing a relationship with her. But other than that, he's the one who's got the most positive going for him. Throughout the course of the book, well, in the last book, we learned that Logan, Nine Fingers, has bouts of berserker rage, just bloodlust to which he will kill anything in sight, with happiness and glee, laughing the whole time. He told a story in the last book about how he wound up getting in a fight with a friend when he was like 13 or 14 years old, and has no recollection of what happened, but when he comes to his senses, he has killed his friend, for which he fakes his death to make it look like an accident, like throws him over a cliff, his body over a cliff. But he also flies into berserker rage in the last book, which does wind up working out because he comes out of it enough time before, the only thing he's killed are his enemies. And so far, the character of Logan seems to be like a nice person, but the more we learned about him, is he a reliable narrator of his past? He says he wants to be a good person, but he also admitted that when he was with Bethod as Logan the Bloody Nine, he enjoyed the fear and respect his reputation gave him. And the more we learn about him, the more horrible things we learn he has done. And the same thing goes for Beaz, the first of the Magi. He's been telling us the events of the past from his point of view. But is he a reliable narrator? And this was not a fun book to read. It is just as well written as the rest of the books. But you know, in the second book, Before They Are Hanged, we saw these characters progress to the point where you thought that they were improving. We thought that their lives were going to get better. And in this book, it doesn't look like they're going to be. You know, I'm not going to go and spoil everything all the way to the ending, but I've pretty much given you the idea that this book, these characters are facing some dark times. And, you know, they might be reverting to their old ways. Yeah, without eventually giving away everyone's fate in the end, I think that's what made it hard for me to pick up and read, because it was like, man, I wanted these guys to get better. You know, I thought that things were improving. I thought that they were forging friendships, you know, becoming less selfish, and less self-interested. I thought they were becoming better people. And you know, you're kind of you're left wondering, you know, will people get the happy ending that we want them to have? Will people get the endings they deserve? Or in the case of maybe some people, do these people deserve a happy ending? I mean, we learn of Logan Nine Fingers Past. I've mentioned that. It's like, you know, was he really as bad as his reputation paints him? And if he was, does he deserve a happy ending? I mean, the character that we meet him when he's like, you know, a bit older in life. He's reflecting on his past. But, you know, in his 20s and 30s, how much of a brutal monster was he? Does someone like him deserve the quiet life? Does he deserve to settle down with a wife and children and, you know, live a happy ending? And man, and I think that was the intention from what I've, you know, gone online to look up the stuff and look at people's conversations. I think that was Abercrombie's intention, was to show that life isn't fair. You know, people don't always get the endings they deserve, for good or for evil. You know, evil men are sometimes rewarded. Good people sometimes have horrible things happen to them, and there's never any justice for them. So I think from what I've read, that was Abercrombie's intention. But man, it's a hard thing to read when you become invested in the characters, when you start to like them or become interested in them. I find that the one story arc in here that was easiest for me to read was Glotka's. And I think primarily it's because he's the one person who doesn't lie to himself. For all that he may lie to other people and the horrible things that he does, he has no illusions about who and what he is. He's a cripple. He's the head of the Inquisition. He's their best torturer. He does horrible things on the orders of other people. He has a few moments of honor, and you get glimpses that if circumstances were different, that's who he'd prefer to be. But he also acknowledges that that's not the cards he was dealt. You know, his few actions of honor and mercy are things he's not even sure why he himself does anymore. He does, you know, he knows he's so far down the rabbit hole of being a monster that he doesn't even know why he bothers to make any attempts to be good at all. So for some reason, I found his stuff easiest to read. I was more invested in his story than the stories of the other characters. And I want to stress that these are my opinions. The book is as well written as the others. I think the entire trilogy is very well written. I know there are other books in this series. I think the next book takes place like 15 years after this, I think. I'm not entirely certain. And I'm not, given the way this ends, I'm not sure I want to pursue this any further. Knowing that Abercrombie's going to treat his characters this way. It's the same reason I stopped reading the Game of Thrones. I just didn't enjoy, watching people that I'd invest in myself, characters I'd invest in myself in, just get killed, out of the blue with little warning, even if there was warning. The horrible things that happen to those characters, I didn't enjoy reading it. I'm not opposed to realism. I'm not opposed to, horrible things happening to people because they're part of the plot, but it's just like some stories are just too dark. you know, Too dark even for me. And Game of Thrones fit that bill. And I made it through this trilogy. I may change my mind at some point. I'm looking at my book collection, looking at the books I need to read. In my to read list, I have my to buy list. And also I review older books, and when I review those, I usually go back and read them, or at least skim them. So I've got 700 or 800 books here I could read that I haven't read in 30 years. So I've got enough to keep me busy without, depressing myself reading the next books in the series. But they are really well written, and it's a decently told story. So for that, I would recommend it. But from a personal perspective, I didn't love it. It's more one of those stories that I can appreciate the craftsmanship and the skill it took to write this book, but not something I necessarily enjoyed. And I probably, if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have read it. But again, that's a personal thing. I don't like stories that are this dark. I read to be entertained, not to be depressed. I usually, I read to avoid the depressing stuff. So it's a good book. It's a good series, but I'm glad I'm done, and I don't know if I'm going to continue it. As I've mentioned before, I hate giving somewhat bad reviews to things that are well done. But I got to be honest, this is how I feel about the book. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.